Good evening, everyone, and welcome this evening to our dialogue and conversation and celebrating Women's History Month. And we are so excited that you have joined us for the evening. My name is Elijah Strong, and I'm humbled to serve as Executive Director here for Teach Democracy Now. And again, just so excited that you have decided to spend this evening in conversation and in reflection with us. Teach Democracy Now is a social decree responding to the existential threats facing democratic education. And we amplify the voices of the educationally and democratically silenced, those marginalized by information inequity, voter suppression, and educational disenfranchisement. Through storytelling, scholarship, and civic formation, we call forth the new generation of learners and leaders to protect democracy as a sacred public trust. As a second year Master in Divinity candidate at Howard University School of Divinity, there's a thought that rings in my mind that there is no task that is more sacred than the liberation of our people, and especially Black folks. It is with this at the forefront of my mind that I think of the quote that Bell Hooks echoes in her reflection of teaching critical thinking, that each generation democracy must be born anew, and that education is his midwife by John Dewey. Right now, current events of our educational realities, we are seeing a world, a democratic society that invests more money in wars than it does in addressing uh, basic the basic literacy crisis that we are seeing. It is that I remember the words of Nelson Mandela when he says that education is the most powerful weapon in which we can use to change the world. For a while, I have thought about what made Mandela compare education to weapons. In most critical studies of education, we will learn that we oftentimes point to the paradox of a democratic society that bases itself off of a science of scarce resources, time and money. We know that if you're wasting time, then ultimately you're wasting money. So the value of any democratic society that professes those things to be scarce then must determine its value based upon where do they invest their money. So in dialogue this evening, we're going to look to women who have been shaped and informed, who have become trailblazers in the field of historically Black colleges and universities. And I'm so excited to be joined by, I believe, some of the most critical voices in Generation Z. And I'm so happy that you all are here with us. Before we start, I want to highlight student Caitlin Daniels, who is a first year student at Florida A&M University, and she interns here with us at University Now. And part of her success story, I believe, will be to say that she had the opportunity to form and shape uh, one of the most competitive organizations that will respond to the educational crisis that we are living in. And so I invite you to learn about these opportunities if you are a student who is joining in with us this evening to see how you can be a part of a movement that is advocating for educational justice. At this time, I would like to welcome Dr. Catherine, pastor of Grace Hill Church of Shreveport, Louisiana, to come on and give us an invocation.
Good evening. It is my delight to be here. As we celebrate Women's Month, it is important that we all gravitate toward our origin story. We all know about the life of one Opal Lee, who, because of her courage, because of her stance, decided that the origin story of people of color needed to be known, not just in the United States of America, but across the globe. So we are grateful for those origins. We're grateful for the freedom that we now share. It is important that we have educational conversations as these about democracy. I ask that you will continue to think about your origin story and that you will continue to think about the womb of women like those who we know in Exodus, the first chapter, helping to deliver, helping those who were destined for death to live wonderful lives. Let us now pray. Most gracious Father, we ask of you today that you give us the courage to be able to stand strong, to go forth. May we have the capacity that gives birth to solutions like Mary, Mother of Jesus. May we go run and tell what we know and educate others like Mary Magdalene. May we assist in the journeys of those who are yet becoming like Deborah. May we advocate for those who may be unable to speak on their own behalf, like Mary and Martha. May we carry and may we possess the discernment that leaps within, like Elizabeth, when we know that we're in the presence of something great. May we, with strategy, move like Miriam to organize to make sure that those who need to be rejoined and reunited can do so. And finally, Father, may we have the boldness beyond beauty like Esther that brings that beauty into the lives of others whose situations may not be that beautiful at all. We ask it all in Christ Jesus. Amen.
God bless you, Dr. Catherine. If it's all right, I would like to just have a few words to celebrate Dr. Catherine, who has been a trailblazer in education. And, at the site of serving in student government, she took me on as a spiritual son, has mentored me. And I remember when I thought that there was going to be a fork in the road for my theological studies, there were surprise checks in the mail from Dr. Catherine. It is this type of relationships, this type of community that we need when we see a government that is failing to invest economically for opportunities for first generation students like myself. So thank you, Dr. Catherine, for your service, for your humility, and for your service to God as well. It is in that matter that I would like to introduce two women who will, for one, lead us through this dialogue, but have inevitably changed my life and have made me a better person holistically. I had the chance of meeting Trustee Toiya McGruder, who has answered the call to help govern and to shape this organization. While I was in high school, during COVID-19, I was introduced to Toya. I known her to be a fierce advocate who was making some good trouble in Louisiana during her time at Dillard University. She got involved into politics, and she came back to the school district that produced both of us, Crowley ISD, in our hometown. And I remember her saying things that interrupted the environment. I remember feeling a feeling that was very unconventional and uncomfortable, and it's very normal here at Howard. But it was in that ambiance of the South, or what Dr. King describes as a place that values order over justice, that she came and provided a justice-centered noise for education equality for young African American males like myself. I immediately whatever was in her, and I knew that it was anointing, that it was the same type of justice-centered life that I wanted to live, that I wanted to embody and embolden when I got to Wiley University and served in leadership capacities. So it's in that spirit that I welcome her and thank her for all of the many seeds that she has sown into my life to help me to see education not just from an instrument, but objectively look at it to advance it for people like us. So I welcome her. And for Janae Pratt, I remember you walking on the campus of Wiley College your first year as a student coming all the way from the Bahamas, who is now preparing to graduate. I will never forget the many lessons that you have helped to shape for me in terms of friendship, for better understanding manhood for myself, and for teaching me what it means to just show up in conversation continually. Hearing about your senior thesis and championing for educational equity I know that our connection now is divinely orchestrated by our sovereignly God. So I welcome the both of you to guide us through this conversation, and I put this service in the hands of you.
Thank you so much, Elijah, for those wonderful introductions. Once again,
Well, good evening, everyone. Those of you who have chosen to join us online. I'm sorry, Janae, go ahead.
no, you're fine. Go ahead. It's a little.
Well, I just wanted to say I appreciate you all. I appreciate your kind remarks, and I am very lucky to be joined today by Miss Janae. So I'm going to yield and let her give us some wonderful remarks so that we can kick this conversation off.
Good morning, all. I am Janae. Thank you so much, Elijah, again for those wonderful remarks. I am so excited to be joined by Trustee McGruder. And without further ado, we'll go ahead and get this started. Alrighty, so we're going to now go ahead and invite the panelists to introduce themselves in the following order. First, we have Cameron Lawrence.
Hello, everybody. I hope you all can hear me well. I am just ending the class session that we have currently right now at school, co-participant research, but I'm Cameron Lawrence. I am a second-year doctoral student in the Department of Education, Policy, Politics, and Leadership at UC Berkeley. I'm a two-time graduate from Clark Atlanta University, where I received my bachelor's of biology and my master's of public administration with a concentration in nonprofit leadership and management, where I also have my nonprofit. It's called Project HBCU, devoted to breaking the K-12 school to prison pipeline and sending students to historically Black colleges and universities with financial assistance, youth leadership skills, and civic engagement / community service skills. So nice to meet you all.
Thank you so much, Ms. Lawrence. Next, we'll have Ms. Jaden Williams.
Hello, everyone. Such a pleasure to be here with you all. I am a recent graduate, class of 2025 from Spelman College, where I earned my Bachelor's of Arts in Political Science and minored in Spanish. Now I am a first-year MDiv candidate. That's Master of Divinity, for those who may not know, Master of Divinity candidate at Yale Divinity School. And I'm so excited to be a part of this conversation, to incorporate all that I've learned through my justice work and what I'm doing now in my theological field. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Williams. Next, we'll have Ms. Lena Udibak.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our call today. My name is Lena Udibak. I graduated from Dillon University in 2024, and now I work with a debate league here in Detroit named the Umoja Debate League, where I teach students debate, and I am looking forward to entering law school this fall. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you so much for being here, Ms. Udibak. And last
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Morgan Forbes. I am a graduate of Spelman College, and I currently attend Howard University School of Law, where I serve as the 1L class treasurer, and I'm looking forward to speaking with you all tonight.
Thank you so much, all. Ms. McGruder.
Thank you all so much for introducing yourselves. We're so excited to have this conversation with you tonight. I want to thank our founder as well for the opportunity to serve in this capacity as the moderator for this conversation. I shared with Elijah recently an African proverb that says a river does not drink its own water. And one thing I want to center our conversation in as we transition to the quote by Miss Bell Hooks is that what is placed within us is meant to move outward. So while I am grateful to serve with you all, I also recognize that this vision, this work, this movement certainly does not start with me or even either one of you. We're all just a steward of something much larger. And with that being said, I hope you will join me with reading this quote. Education as the practice of freedom affirms healthy self-esteem in students as it promotes their capacity to be aware and live consciously. It teaches them to reflect and act in ways that further self-actualization rather than conformity to the status quo. We can all point to many examples, I'm sure, that have shown us a different kind of education, particularly for students who look like us and especially Black women. The latter half of Hook's reflection calls our attention to an education that hasn't just been liberatory, but instead one that has too often required conformity to the status quo. So today I'm excited to be joined by my co-moderator, Janae Pratt, who is a graduating senior preparing for a major academic milestone, defending her senior thesis on educational disparities. Just applause, I know it's going up everywhere. And so, Janae, I would like to begin by asking you, how do current educational inequities take shape according to your research?
Thank you so much for that question, Trustee McGruder. So, according to my research, it entitles me to go ahead and kind of reframe the question a little bit. It's not more so just Ms. Forbes, can you mute your mic? I'm sorry. So yes, based on my research, this actually calls us to reframe the question not as current, but more so like you stated, Trustee McGruder, it did not just start with us. This has been systemic cycles that have been passed down and brought to us today, which is why it is now our calling to go ahead and change the status quo, as Bell Hooks states. We are the generation that are meant to go ahead and actually start enforcing education and implementing education in our homes and communities as it should have been. There is this quote that if you want to hide something from a Black person, put it in a book. That should not be so. We are, as individuals, to challenge ourselves to think daily. We as individuals have to challenge ourselves to go ahead and learn something new every day. We owe it to ourselves to do at least that. And furthermore, my research actually positions myself. It is an autoethnographical study, which positions me as both the researcher and the research. So as a Bahamian student, as a Bahamian woman at that, I bring a more global perspective to pedagogical inequities, particularly for communities that have been historically denied access. My research is, in many ways, a chronicle to my own story and how I have navigated those systems while still striving toward opportunity and transformation. So that means going beyond everything that has happened in the past. Yes, I may have had a grandmother that didn't attend college. Yes, I may have had a mother that didn't attend college. Does that mean that I should have not attended college? No, that means I am to challenge myself to be the first in my family to go ahead and get that education that will go ahead and set my family up and future families as well as my community up for success, because sometimes people have to visualize and see themselves in positions that were once out of reach for us. So by positioning myself within the story as not only a Black woman, but a Black Bahamian woman, a Black Caribbean woman, there are so many cultures and so many characteristics tied to me that put me into the story of being another college educated woman that adds to the statistic of many characteristics of college educated women. And that also relates back to our community, because once they see that there is someone that is willing to be educated and that's willing to come back and educate them, they can envision themselves and actually see themselves in spaces that have historically lacked representation. So that's why educational equity is so important, because it allows us to not only change our future generations, but also the future of the workforce. So thank you so much for that question, Trustee McGruder. Toya, as a former classroom teacher, I would value your perspective on this.
One of the things I love that you said, Janae, was you talked about how education is not just the responsibility of the schools, but it's a communal effort, right? So that whenever we go home and we're with our families, that we have this responsibility to one another as parents, brothers, sisters, cousins, to teach one another and to expand and build our foundation. And what you're saying is something that our communities have been doing for so long. And, that kind of perfectly leads into a lot of what I thought about and saw when I was in the classroom, because there's a lot of erasing of our history, and there's a lot of centering of histories that are exclusive of what our experiences were and are, right? And so there's this perception that, you know, Black folks just don't know anything, or that they've never wanted to know anything, or that there's this spirit of laziness, and all of that could be further from the truth. As soon as Black folks could get their hands on a book, they got their hands on a book and they started reading. Before we could even pronounce the words or know what the words were, we was in there figuring it out. What this looks like that, and connecting the dots and making it work. Before we could read, we were singing songs. And once we were able to read, then we were turning the words that we were reading into songs. And the first place, to something that I'm sure that, Jaden's experience will touch on as well. The first place that we started to get educated was the church. That was the very first place that Black folks started to educate each other, before the first public school in America was in the Black church. So all that being said, I've been reading a lot lately, and it's funny that our quote, was centered, a Bell Hooks quote, but I've been reading Salvation lately by Bell Hooks. And a lot of what Miss Hooks is talking about is love, right? And a lot of work on love. And what she's talking about is not just like, this romantic lovey-dovey, but this real crisis of self-love that lives in our communities. And in education, I think the way I see and have seen that shown up is a failure to fully see and invest in our students. Because love, in the context that I'm speaking about now, is not soft and romantic, right? It's really rigorous. It's believing that the students that are in our classrooms are capable of deep thought, they're capable of excellence, of transformation, and then building the kind of classroom that reflects that and gives them permission to be that. So this inequity that we're talking about is not just structural, although it is, and that's a very important part of the conversation. It's also relational. And I think it's about whether we are creating environments at home and at school where Black children are truly feeling seen, challenged, and valued. And whenever that's not happening, that impact, to me, is just as big, if not bigger, than any erasure of history or funding gap. So that's, I love that you said that, because that's exactly what I've been thinking lately. So now I want to turn it over to our lovely panel that we have here tonight. And I want to ask for each of you, all within your respective areas of study and leadership, I would like to know, how would you define the most pressing issues that are facing education in our world today? And Kimron, my girl, we're going to start off with you.
Well, perfect. Yes, please start off with me, because actually I'm doing a research study right now on the pursuit of my Black sorors, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, of course, but our sorority sisters that are Delta Deers, in their migration from the deep Jim Crow South to their pursuit to education, as well as their migration to California. And so I'm using that experience to, as a utopian method through social design, to kind of show our students the path to education that they came from, right? They don't realize all the work that was put in. They see the movies and they think that that's just movies. Like one of my sorors said in her studies, one of my field notes, she said, these students think that these are just movies, but no, we actually lived it, right? She said we were going to the parades where KKK was leading the march, and we were wondering, why are we here? Because that was just what was popular at the time, right? That's what we had inference to at the time, right? reading and math test scores in the United States right now. That is at the forefront of the educational issues that are persisting here. That's what we're working on right now here at Cal, as well as how to maintain AI, because AI is killing us, okay? It's stripping critical thinking. Once you have no critical thinking, once you have no imagination, once you don't know how to read, you don't know how to write, you don't know how to do math, the world will be messed up, because you are the future. That's what I try to instill into my students. Like, you are the future, you are the next. So if you want to be driving down the bridge and you don't know if the bridge is going to be stable, just know that was on you and that was on your generation. But yeah, I would say one of the most pressing issues right now is reading and math test scores in the United States. You look at the national statistics, only 1/3 of our students in the whole United States know how to read at their at their right grade. And this is we're just looking at 12th grade statistics right here. So how do we bring back in the reading into the community? Because like you said, I think you said Jaden will touch on it, how church was a really big help into her experience with reading. Likewise, I could not read until the 4th grade, okay? I spent every Saturday in the 3rd to 4th grade going up to the church with one of my mom's sorority sisters. And she would just teach me how to read. We didn't understand why I wasn't reading right. They don't realize that dyslexia and ADHD and all these things cause different symptoms of why you're not reading correctly. How do we bring back in the community to show us how we're doing these? I was having the conversation with my sorors, because I'm doing a whole project on them right now. So having a conversation with them. And I was like, the grandparents are not raising the grandchildren anymore. We're far disconnected. I remember growing up, my great grandmother and her best friend used to walk me to pre-K kindergarten. I'm picking up, their steps, their languages, learning the songs that they sing. It's the cultural knowledge exchange that's being passed on. That's no longer happening. So it's something that we could work on. And I'm going to pass the mic because I'll have more to say later.
Yes, thank you for that. I want to continue talking about the presence of AI. And I want to mention that I believe a pressing issue is dehumanization. And I believe that, yes, AI assists in that. The rhetoric that we're hearing in our society, it assists in dehumanizing, right? And so when we think about children in the classroom learning, children who have been dehumanized, right? They're already removed from being able to feel seen in that space, right? If you cannot feel seen, understood, if your humanity has been removed from who you are, then you can't learn. You can't show up in that space. And so a lot of what my perspective reflects is, how do we see people? How do we see children, right? How do we see humans for who they are, right? We're talking about systems that have removed our humanity as Black people. And so for me, a lot of that, yes, it has been through the church. The church has been a building that has allowed us to commune together, to practice our traditions, our oral traditions, which the body is the church is a space where we can come together to really to build on that, to build on what may be missing from the classroom, right? And again, the American education system was not built for Black children. It wasn't built for Black children. So we have to build up. We have to build up what we know. We have to build up what we have, right? And so for me, right, coming from the Black church tradition, the Bible is a book of tradition. We're reading stories. We're reading how people overcame oppression. We're reading how mothers passed down stories and passed down traditions and ways of survival, right? And so for me, it's an opportunity to pass down traditions where they're not getting it in the classroom. We also have a calling on us to make sure that students, children are receiving that. Representation matters as well. If you're in the classroom, I had an opportunity to do Teach for America, and I was going to be teaching in a predominantly Black classroom. Representation matters. Continue to earn your education so that you can go back and give to these young folks. In the age of AI, right, I personally have my convictions about it. Honestly, I feel like you said it drains you of the gifts that you were given, right? It drains you of the gifts you were given. And we're in a time where we need to really be emphasizing to young children, go pick up a book. It's okay to, go home to your families, your young cousins, your baby cousins, your family, and tell them, look, it's okay to put the iPad down. Let's go pick up a book. So for me, I think it's about it's about being aware of what's taking place, right? Arming yourself with that knowledge. As a leader, we're the leaders, going back into your community, using what has been given to us, reinforcing that into our children, and allowing them to create and building up their confidence. That's another thing. Confidence is so important. When you dehumanize a child, confidence is gone. Confidence is gone. When I was working at Spelman, I was in a program called Spell Reads, and we would go into inner city and we would work with children, their literacy and everything like that. And one of the trainings that we had it was all about centering the student, right? When the system says this student, they lack literacy, they lack fluency, they don't know how to read, they label them, right? Confidence knocker. They're being bullied in the classroom. All of these factors are contributing to why they're not being successful, right? But the training that we incorporated in Spell Reads was all about play, the importance of humanizing and bringing back the innocence that a child needs in order to thrive. You have to center the child. You have to think about the things that the system's not thinking. The system's not going to care that that child may not have eaten food. And if they don't eat that food, their brain is not prepared to take on these lessons, right? So for me, it's really about centering our children, representing for them as we climb educationally and academically and professionally, and giving back that confidence to let them know that we got them and they're going to get through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaden and Cameron. I love what the two of you shared. And as we transition, our next panelist we're going to go to is Lena. I want to share that, as we're talking about community and as we're talking about all of these things that are impacting us, we know that we are a communal people, right? I want to maybe give us an opportunity to think a little bit deeper about this idea that as a community, we always reproduce what it is that we honor, right? And so when the thing that we uphold and honor as a people is not education or is not, reading, history, all of these different things, or we allow the narrative that society is putting out there, or we allow the narrative that entertainment and media and the culture, whoever the culture is now, right? Whenever we allow that to become the norm, then it silences what has always been true for our communities, which is exactly what the two of you have stated, right? The traditions that started in the Black church and the things that we value and the truth that we have always uplifted, even when it's been uncomfortable. And so, Lena, in this rich conversation we're having, we invite you. I know you're coming in a hard moment now because Jaden just really gave us a lot to think about, but we want to hear from you now. What are you thinking? What is a challenge or a pressing issue that you see that's facing education in our world today?
I think the biggest issue is trying to educate children. Okay, let me start from the beginning. So right now we're dealing with children who were impacted heavily by COVID, right? And they're also being educated in curriculum standards that have been changed. So these are all the children who are getting their education under No Child Left Behind, which we all know has left thousands and millions of kids behind. And so when we're educating kids who are deep into the technological age, they had to endure COVID. Now we have AI on the rise. We can't utilize traditional methods to help educate these kids anymore because they don't even have the attention spans that we had as a kid anymore. And so I have to even remind myself that when I'm going in to educate these kids for debate, one of the beautiful things about these children is that they know so much, but on the same side, they also don't know anything at all. And so a lot of my students that I teach, to just give a little bit more context, they're 8th graders. I have a couple 6th graders, but most of them are 8th grades. I have a lot of gentlemen in here. I teach in a school district outside of my own school district here in Michigan. So I teach in River Rouge districts, and they're really intelligent, great kids. And to Jaden's point, we do have to make sure that we're making sure that their confidence is there. A lot of my kids, that is not a problem. All of our students are on the honor roll or the principal's roll. And so they're at the top of their class in terms of reading and the math standards that we need. So those are met. However, when we're talking about culture and community, that is heavily lacking. And so one of the things that I had to start doing is implementing this into my curriculum. So we start off our debate practices with an affirmation statement, letting them know that they are important to their community. The world does have a need for you. You do have a powerful voice. You are smart. You can critically think. There are things that you can do. And then we go into our African proverb. So we have proverbs from different tribes all throughout Africa. And they really understand what the proverbs mean, and they have their own, thoughts and things about this. And so in that regard, they're getting rich. But when I ask them about people in America and civil rights activists, even, for my Latino students, they can't name them. If I ask them, who is Frida Kahlo? You can't tell me that. Who is Malcolm X? You can't tell me that. There is a problem. And so when we do have to have conversations about community or our history, they don't have that. We're also post the crack epidemic. A lot of their parents were born, they were Gen Xers, and a lot of Gen X was experiencing life in the crack epidemic. And so everybody's parents and moms and dads were not on crack. However, it must have been hard to experience and live in a life where you cannot trust people with your neighbors. And so when we're dealing with a generation who is now having kids post-COVID, post No Child's Left Behind, but their parents were able to deal with the trauma from the crack epidemic, well, we have kids and parents that are broken because they did see classmates or their moms or their grandparents on drugs. And we also did see our brothers and sisters maybe contributing into an economic system that was disenfranchising us too. And so it starts with understanding in the Black community, a lot of things were always targeted. We've never caught a break. And so we're not lazy. It's just we have to change how we're doing things. And one of the things I think can help with these things are creating community bookstores. In Detroit, I know so many Black-owned businesses that are opening, but they're bars and restaurants. We don't need all of these bars and restaurants, but what we do need are more after-school tutoring safe spaces for children. What we do need are more roller skating or more communal recreation leagues so that students can utilize sports. After art programs in all school districts in predominantly Black or Latino communities are being cut. We do need more spaces where students can utilize music or art and painting and things like that too as a self-outlet. And I think what we also have to do is just allow students the duality of things. I think, and I'm about to wrap this up, but we're getting back into these conversations that W.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington are having. Do we go trade? Do we go to college? No, you do both. If you're interested in becoming a plumber or HVAC technician, there is a space for you. You can make a lot of money off that. And there's actually pretty much good, stable job opportunities compared to getting your degree right now. We told a lot of students to go STEM. A lot of those jobs now are being cut due to AI. And so it's not there is no wrong way to do this. You can be educated and still be an artist, because that is important too. And so I think we're just getting to a place where we have to allow our students to go in what it is. Everybody is not going to be a pastor. Everybody's not going to be a doctor, but we do need artists, and Black art is important too, because they are still oppressed. And so I think we just have to talk to the youth and see what do they need. And we need to talk to these parents and see what do they need. And then that way we can come together as a community to give them support as a whole. Oh.
That was good, Lena. I love that. I love that. And you know what? I'm so glad you're teaching those babies about Malcolm, because how can you not know about Malcolm? My goodness.
Their last one was James O. Farmer, and we watched The Great Debate. And I was like, nah, y'all, we got to shout out Wiley. So I try to give them leaders who went to HBCUs too. They don't all have to go, but I try to incorporate that in there, because we got to tell these stories.
We have to tell these stories. We have to tell these stories. And, the core divide between Booker T. Washington and Du Bois is one I think that still exists today very deeply, right? Because a lot of times we have people who went into, Booker T. Washington was thinking about Tuskegee. He was thinking about economic self-sufficiency. He wasn't thinking about being confrontational. He was thinking about how can we make social progress. And WEB was like, no, we need to fight right now. We need to be thinkers. And if we don't become leaders, we're going to remain oppressed. But then as we're elevating as a people, we have to begin to think about how can we let both things have their way, right? Because we need to be thinkers, we need to be leaders, but there's also nothing wrong with being doers too. So I love that. Morgan, we put you at the end because we know that you're going to be the anchor to this conversation and this question right here. And so talk to us. There's been a lot of definitions tonight, but bring it home for us for what your definition would be of the most pressing issues that you see facing education in our world today.
Well, I'd just like to thank the lovely panelists for throwing out so many amazing ideas that I have to piggyback off of. I definitely think that it's so important for us to highlight the fact that we are living in a time where no child left behind, coming off of the crack epidemic, COVID, that is our status quo. And we have to understand the status quo that we're living in, and that for me, I think right now the biggest problem facing education is capacity within the community. I think right now we're heavily focused on the systems. However, we can look out any window in America and tell that the systems are not working for anyone, even the people that the systems are intended to work for. I think it's really important for us to take some autonomy within the Black community. And if that means Saturday schools, if that means, just like you said, going up and learning how to read. I'm sure your mom's sorority sister wasn't your teacher, or she may have been a teacher, but she just was like, oh, that's nothing for me. Of course, I'd be happy to. And I think that's really important. I think we have to understand and take an audit of where we are within the community. And I think, Lena, you did an amazing job of setting up the past couple of decades and what we've been up against. And I think that we, as a community, may not have always been honest about how bad things really have affected us. And I think that's important because it allows conversations where we can express, like, hey, I need help, I need resources, or what can I put my child into so that we can make sure we get these scores up, or hey, here's this debutante program, make sure you go, like, we're doing college tours, different exposure. I think that's what's really important, and it's directly correlated to the self-esteem issue that we're seeing. And self-esteem is everything when it comes to education. If you don't believe you can do it, you won't be able to do it. And I think it's so important that we keep showing up as examples for what it is, what's possible in this world. I think that it's so hard as we reflect on the world that we live in today, and it's very it's like staggering compared to the world that we grew up in, even though it was just maybe like 10 or 15 years ago. It's completely different now with AI and with social media. I think it's a lot that parents have to combat in order to make sure that students aren't being exposed to things that they didn't plan. But I think that it's so important for us as a community to see a child and look at that child as your own child and take accountability and actually see a need and not just identify that need, but also identify the solution without shame and without blame. I think that's something else that's really important. It's hard to get on the same page if you feel like, oh, well, I don't have that problem or I don't have that problem. I think it's important to be empathetic and really be loyal to the community and understand that the only way out of these problems is if we stick together and if we share resources and if we show up at city council meetings and if we show up at the school board meetings and if we report teachers who aren't pouring into our students and make sure that they aren't allowed to sit in front of our students from Monday through Friday every week if they aren't pouring into the students. And also, I think it's important that we advocate for legislation that protects the teachers who care, the teachers who want to be there and who are pouring into the students. I think it's important that we show as a community we value you. When it even in August, when it was time for back to school, I know a few teachers were taking to social media to share concerns that they were having trouble to motivate parents in order to buy school supplies for their classroom. And I think that is a value statement. Your budget is a value statement of what you think is most important. And it's important for us to show that we have the capacity to take on for students who may not have school supplies. There's no issue. They will still learn because students who have an abundance can share. So just really kind of moving away from blaming the system, even though it's undoubtedly the system that has caused all of these problems. It's been outrageous, the systemic racism that we've been going through for hundreds of years. But I do think that we can collectively say that the Black community through generations has shown perseverance, and we can take a look in those books and look back to a time where the family structure was very strong and we weren't relying on only the school to teach our children. And I think that's something that we can move towards and make sure that we're taking autonomy for our children.
Morgan, you brought us home. I love it. This has been such an enriching and rigorous conversation, so much so that we're knocking at the door at 7 o'clock and I don't even know how we got here so quick. Now, that being said, we want to hear from everybody at least one more time, but quick fire. Now, you know that the generation of people, young adults who are coming up are, I like to call them the TikTok generation. Okay, attention span is short. It's not a lot of room for us to, say what we got to say. We got to figure out how we want to say and say it quick. So what I want to pose to everyone is a last quick fire question. Then we'll take our final question from the audience. I want you to share your HBCU, your favorite thing about it, and then give one piece of advice for those who are navigating their educational journeys. Okay, so quick fire. I'm gonna start. I went to Dillard University, the best HBCU. Okay, let me not even start that. I went to Dillard University, a great HBCU. I love the fact that I was surrounded by people who cared about me. And one thing that I would share for anybody who is trying to decide what HBCU or where to go is that I chose Dillard because it was a small school that was a really good fit for me. So you need to find the HBCU that fits you personally and your needs. Y'all see how I did that? I feel like that was like good TikTok link, okay? So I'm gonna kick it over to Jaden. Get us started.
Yeah, so I went to Spelman College. I chose Spelman. Well, I love Spelman because of the sisterhood. Now I'm forever a part of that legacy. And I will say, having a grounding, a spiritual grounding, that's what I want to leave you with. Have a spiritual grounding. I can't tell you what you believe in. I don't know what everybody believes in. For me, that's Jesus. But I'm saying have a grounding somewhere you can go when the seasons are rough. Because amassing educationally, right? Building educationally is challenging. Knowledge is power, and always remain rooted in your faith.
Beautiful. Morgan, what are you thinking?
So I attended Spelman College, but I'll say my school today is Howard University School of Law. My favorite thing about Howard University School of Law has been being surrounded by so many legal minds who are interested in the things that I'm interested in. Usually, if I'm like wanting to talk about something that's related to the law, I'll be like the nerd, but everyone's like, oh yeah, like, and we just can talk about things for hours. So I really love that. And any advice that I would leave is to make sure you find some strong mentorship and check in with your mentors. Do not be nervous or do not feel any sort of way about the relationship. If you've asked someone to be your mentor and they've agreed, you're not bothering them by reaching out to your mentor. So definitely, and also look up the difference between a sponsor and a mentor, because more Black people need sponsors rather than just mentorship.
Find good help and a mentor. That's a word, Morgan. That's a word. Lena?
So I also went to the illustrious Dilley University. My favorite thing about Dilley University is the oaks, because sometimes I just need to be in nature and the oaks is just so beautiful. My advice for those navigating their educational journeys, whether you're in undergrad or you're going to graduate school, do not give up. There are going to be so many nights where you just don't want to give up. You don't want to drop out. You don't want to let it go. But you have to keep going, because when you get on the other side of the mountain, baby, it is beautiful. Okay? So do not give up, because you are not alone.
Okay, Lena preaching over here. Cameron, and then Janae, we coming to you after Cameron, so don't you think you're getting out of it?
Well, perfect. I attended the illustrious Clark Atlanta University. One of my favorite things about attending Clark Atlanta University is that the connections that you're able to build with other HBCU students. I actually see a few of my White House Scholar sisters. I see a few of my HBCU presidents here, a few of my UNC UNCF family on the call. And the thing is, right, if I didn't go to this HBCU, I would never have had the opportunity to even be on this panel today, right? You know, one thing I want y'all to take away from me is that your social capital is going to be your best capital, right? It's about your weak and your strong ties. Now, look, don't think that a weak tie is weak just because of the name. It's actually the tie that connects you to all these amazing opportunities that you didn't even know existed. I love my thing about my HBCU because I'm actually at Cal right now on a full ride scholarship. I actually got a full ride to any University of California school, but I attended UC Berkeley and they just accepted me as like a family on a full ride because I attended an HBCU, right? Don't think that just because, oh, you're going to an HBCU, your education stops there. No, actually, these top institutions are now on game that HBCUs actually have those hidden gems of students, right? You look at all these top institutions. Actually, I'm the president of the Black Graduate Student Association here at Cal, and most of my student body attended HBCUs before this. So we all have that like little connection that we all are coming from. So that's what I would say. And then to our high school students, one piece of advice I would give you with navigating your educational journey is really tap into Project HBCU. I have gotten students over this semester for sure over $800,000 in scholarships and fellowships, and that's not even including me. Me myself, I've gotten over $700,000 in fellowships and scholarships. Never had to pay for nothing in my life. So connect with us at projecthbcu.org, and yeah, Thank y'all for having me on this panel.
Shameless plug, shameless plug. All right, Janae, let's hear from you. And then we have one question from the audience. Well, we have many questions, but we have one question we're going to focus on. Go ahead, Janae.
Thank you so much, Trustee McGruder, and thank you so much, everyone, for sharing all of your perspectives, all of your advice. Representation does matter, and I love that Madam Cameron actually mentioned UNCF because I actually served as Miss National UNCF for a year, and that leads me to my first piece of advice about. Well, I forgot to mention I attended the historic Wiley College, and I now currently attend the bold and audacious Wiley University. So my first piece of advice is to learn your history. Learn about the people that walked those grounds before you because they're going to give you the social maps and the educational maps that you need to actually navigate throughout those journeys. And they're also going to show you things that they did that you can also do. I would have never thought I would be a part of the ring, the 11th Miss National UNCF to come out of Wiley University. Who would have thought? There was 10 before me. Like, you just never know what's going on at these HBCUs. But as soon as you become immersed in the culture of the HBCU and learn the history of the HBCU, that's when you begin to have more appreciation for everything that you learn at that HBCU. Because the people that came before you have done great things, and so can you. My second piece of advice is, let me take a look at what that was. My second piece of advice was be inquisitive. Have a question for literally everything on your campus. You could be missing out on so much opportunity, so much scholarships, so much educational wisdom by not asking questions. Ask the questions that you didn't even know that you wanted to ask. No question is ever a dumb question besides the one that goes unasked. So I say be inquisitive. Ask questions. Go ahead. Like, no one is stopping you. Do all the things that's needed to be done to further you in your educational journey because you will go ahead and inspire those that will come behind you. So go ahead, learn your history, be inquisitive, do all the things. Yes, ma'am.
Can I just say something on to the question on the screen? Anybody out there, if you are in a space where there are few women or few minorities, you can bet your bottom dollar that those few that are there will definitely be happy to speak to you, happy to help you, happy to instill some confidence in you and help you to maneuver that space that you're in, especially if they've already been there, if they've already walked in your shoes. If there is a minority person who is in the same space as you, they will not hesitate to help you out. So definitely lean on the people who are closest to you.
If I can just add something else real quick. If you're in a space where there aren't any other minorities and you're the only one, you have to know and trust in your abilities and know that you are the reason why you got there. It's not because of DEI, it's not because of affirmative action. It is because you are qualified and you are the right person for the job. And don't let anybody shake that or make you question that.
I would also say from a very org theory perspective, because I'm very org theory oriented, can't lie. From that perspective, I want you to know that you create the vibe that you set at every place, right? It doesn't matter where I am, right? Met Toya first day, we definitely clicked on the first day. At any place that I've ever been to, me and the environment is going to click because that's the environment that I want to click with, right? You, like they said, if y'all are at a school, right, and nobody's using the cafeteria, and you and a few other people start using the cafeteria, it builds the social design to say, hey, actually, maybe we should start using the cafeteria, right? So you set the pace. So whatever you set, make sure that you, at the end of the day, whether it's Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, you set the tone and you are at the top. So this is your world. Other people are just living in it. Just like in their head is their world and other people are just living in it. So yeah, that's what I have to add.
I will say that Spelman was the only predominantly Black education I ever received. Before that, when I was in elementary school and middle school, I was one of the only. At a time in my life, I was the only. And then there was a one of the only. And it kind of grew after that. But that I got to a place where I was like, I need to go to an HBCU. In those spaces, also I want to be real with you, and I want you to know that all skin folk and kinfolk. Sometimes you might experience being isolated even by other women and other minorities, even people that are the same as you. Um, at Yale, that is a very real experience. Sometimes you may walk down the street. You know, when we walking down the street, we smile, we nod, we acknowledge each other. Sometimes that don't happen here, and it blows my mind. Um, and this is why I say you have to, one, remain rooted in your faith. Two, you have to know your purpose and have vision. Because when all that's going on, you have to remain rooted. You have to remember your why. Why am I here? It's hard sometimes. And I'm darker skinned. So when I was in elementary school going through that, it was like, man, I'm ugly. I don't feel beautiful, all this and that, right? It really took me having to go through. Sometimes you have to go through the work, right? There's no simple one answer to it. Sometimes you have to go through the healing work. So this is why I'm saying remain rooted and grounded in something spiritually that traverses this natural, traverses your circumstances, right? That can take you outside of that space, so that you can remember and remain rooted in your why, your purpose. But again, echoing what the panelists have said, reaching out to people, building relationships, praying that you have that confidence, and then walking in that prayer. That's absolutely what I have practiced. It's not easy, but it gets easier over time. So, best luck to you all.
Thank you all so much for sharing. This has been such an enriching conversation, and I hope for those of you who have had the opportunity to tune in online, you have felt the sense of community that I feel here on this call with these ladies. Please know that the resources and the gems that have been dropped here tonight, these are real life resources, and these are people who have lived it and are now happy to pay it forward. And so with that, we want to thank you for joining us, and we want to invite you not just to join us for the conversation, but to join the movement that we're building and creating with Teach Democracy Now. It's been my pleasure to moderate this conversation along with Ms. Janae Pratt, and I will now take my moderator hat off and step to the side so that our founder can make an announcement for us. Thank you so much.
Good evening once again. I want to express sincere gratitude for our panelists who have definitely shaped. I'm getting all of this feedback from messages and in the comments on how enriching this dialogue has been, and this is what it takes. Lena talked about working in debate, which went to the home of the great debaters. And one of the things that I felt was very important about organizing community was mainly through shaping dialogue. We oftentimes look at civic engagement in the lens of how can we rally people to vote? How can we get people to the polls? And it oftentimes starts with a liberation model of education. And so that's what we were able to hear and participate in this evening. I'm thankful for all of the panelists who have taken the time to be a part this evening. I was saying most of us are at full studies. And so I want to acknowledge the staff of Teach Democracy Now, most who are volunteering their time to help make conversations and dialogue like this happen. And so I'm really thankful for that. This evening, we especially welcome an audience of current students who are either in their senior year of high school or currently in their first and second year at an historically Black college and university who have been applying and engaging in a scholarship opportunity. And so at this time, I would like to welcome you all to scan the scholarship attendance form and provide feedback there. And I just want to thank everyone again for being a part and coming out and joining us for this evening, and continue to engage with us in community. And this is not the last and final time you'll hear from the panelists. I'm oftentimes telling staff on the back end that we're trying to assemble a competitive organization, a competitive board. And what that means is that we need to be able to help the very voices that you have heard from this evening to be able to do the work, and this be their home. And so we ask that you will pray for us in that regard, and come on and mobilize and organize and just join us. And so we want to thank you again. Have a blessed evening.